on the rabbi who marries them to know background? I mean, would he be in a position to say, well, this guy was off before, and it seems like his pattern is that way, and then maybe he's okay, maybe he's not okay? And does the rabbi have any who performs the marriage? Is there any responsibility on him?
To make sure that the guy's normal.
Right.
Yeah. What, I knew in Portland, we knew someone very similar to this. He had crazy tendencies, certain tendencies, like you do not want to bring up the issues with regards to social media and internet with this person because he was an extremist, and you don't want to bring up his where he lived. But other than that, the guy was a musician. The guy could play the piano like a champion. It was beautiful. You could have normal conversations with him, except when you talk about certain subjects, he was like completely irrational or disassociated from reality.
It's not an uncommon thing.
It's not an uncommon thing.
Not at all.
Right.
I live with my wife. She hears this. Don't tell her. Are we being recorded?
We are being recorded.
Oops.
That's right. Yeah. Tell it to call back. We're right here. Should you wait for her? Okay. The reason why this Rabbi David Lichtenstein, he came up with this title or working on this was because of two major cases that happened very close to each other within the Jewish world. Really shook the Jewish world. The first was in 2011, July 2011. The Jewish world was shaken by two horrific murders perpetrated within a span of 3 weeks of each other by Jews who appeared to have been mentally unstable. On July 8th, 8-year-old Levi Kletzky, a Hasidic boy from Bar Park, was abducted on his way home from day camp and brutally murdered and dismembered by a 35-year-old Jewish man who worked as a clerk in a hardware supply store. Later that month, it was a terrible situation. He was missing.
Yeah,
Everyone was looking for him. Later that month, on July 29th, so that was July 11th, July 29th, Rabbi Elazar Abuchatzera, who is a huge, well-known Kabbalist in Beersheba, very wealthy, very successful, huge following. I knew Rabbi Elazar's son, huge following. Rabbi Elazar, he was stabbed to death by a 42-year-old man who came to him for a blessing. The attorneys defending Kletzky's murder initially pursued an insanity defense, but later arranged a plea bargain, whereas Rabbi Abuchatzera's killer was deemed psychiatrically unfit to stand trial. In the United States, the insanity plea may be invoked on a defendant's behalf as a basis of acquittal in federal court, as well as in state courts in most of the 50 states. This plea is also recognized by many other countries around the world. Hi, Adrian. We apologize. We're just talking about the insanity plea. Okay, so let's look at some sources over here. In Jewish law, in the Torah, we have in the Gemara, we have something called a shote. And a shote is someone who's stupid, or someone who's a fool, someone who is insane, who does not have his full capacity, thinking capacity on it. And let's start right.
Is that a Hebrew term?
A shote, yeah. And let's start right over there. A deaf mute, so this is the Rambam, so Maimonides tells us a deaf mute, a mentally disabled person, and a child are exempt from all Torah commandments. So that's the halacha. That's the famous halacha. Cheresh shoti v'katan. These are words that you should learn if you're learning Gemara, you're learning Mishnah, you're learning you want Jewish law. This is going to come up on a consistent basis. It's going to come up very regularly. You're going to come up with you're going to hear these words, cheresh, shote, and a katan, with regards to obligations of fulfilling Torah obligations. A cheresh is someone who's you can use that the resource. Deaf mute, someone who cannot hear and cannot speak is considered someone who's not able to communicate, and communication is vital to Judaism, and therefore they're exempt from all Torah commandments. A shorte is someone who's disabled, who's mentally challenged, and a katan, a child, is exempt from all Torah commandments. You don't have an obligation. Fine. Says the Primo Gadi, and even when those who are sufficiently mentally disabled violate biblical prohibitions, they do not get punished, neither in this world nor in the next world, for the Torah unequivocally pardons those who are incapable of acting in any other way. So there was your question. You'd asked what happens to a person who's insane, right? When they do something wrong, are they being punished? Do they get punished for their actions? And the answer seems to be over here is that not at all. Not only no, but I would venture to say that someone who's mentally disabled, when they do something good, they don't get the reward for it. When they do something bad, they don't get punished for it. It's not. In order for someone to be rewarded or someone to be punished for an action, you have to know what you do, right? So that's really where the Prima Gadi seems to work. Okay, so what we want to do is define what is a shote. What is a shote? So in Hebrew, shote literally means a fool. Does that mean that every fool is acquitted from mitzvahs? What's considered a shote? So we have a Gemara. It's on page 2. How does the Torah define a shote? The shote is someone who goes out alone at night, sleeps in the cemetery, and tears his own clothing. It sounds like someone who's going to a heavy metal concert, right? No? Someone goes out at night, goes out alone at night, sleeps in the cemetery, and he tears his clothes.
What if he's going there because his mother or his father or his wife died, and that's just how, and he tears his clothes and he's in mourning?
Yeah, so that's clearly not, right?
Right.
The first thing is that it is accepted that we don't go to cemeteries at night. That is something that is naturally we avoid cemeteries. In general, we should avoid cemeteries, especially at night. We don't go to cemeteries on a regular basis. We don't just go and hang out in cemeteries. Let's just put it that way.
Is that superstition or a law?
It's not a law, but these are, it's not necessarily a law, but it is clearly something that normal people don't do.
Progress.
Adrian, you're in twice. Okay. So now the question is, so we have three, number 1, goes out alone at night. Number 2, he sleeps in the cemetery. And number 3 is he tears his clothes. The question is, Itmar Rav Huna holds that you have to do all 3 at the same time. Rabbi Yochanan says, however, even if one does one of them, one is considered a לא אלם דקאביד לו דרך שטוץ, למה בבייס הקברס, אם קדיש תשרי עליו רוח תומה, הדקאביד, ויצא יחיד בלילה, אמור גד בס אחתבה, קרס כסוסי, אמור בעל מחשב עשו, קים דאבדין לכולה ולו כמי שנגע חמור וגמל, ונעשה מועד הכל. So what the Gemara is trying to say is
somebody is guilty of reasons that someone is not guilty for murder or something like that.
you asking a question, Adrian? Sorry.
No, sorry.
I'm gonna mute you. You're gonna mute yourself, okay? So the Gemara is asking, why do we need all three? So the Gemara answers that perhaps one is not sufficient, is not enough to identify exactly what the person is about. If you have just one, perhaps the person is tearing his clothes because he's not necessarily crazy, but he's focused in other areas and he doesn't realize what he's doing. Or a person who goes walks out at night, maybe he's lonely or he needs some fresh air or whatever it may be. However, once he does all three, it is clear that he's a full-blown shoter. So doing all three of them, it clearly identifies what a person is. So now, the real question needs to be is how how do we treat such a shoter, and what is his halachic responsibility? So we said the shoter, he doesn't get punished for his actions, and he also is not rewarded for his actions. So the real question is that only with regards to mitzvahs, or is it with regards to other things? Is it only that, do we say that this person, because this person is insane? Well, let's just go like this. Let's talk from a legal perspective. If someone is insane, we had a different word, I don't remember what was the word that he used? Abnormal, whatever. Person is insane. Can they make purchases legally? Sure. Person who is insane can make purchases legally. A person who is insane, can they marry? Legally? What do you say, Larry? You think that a person can get married if they're legally in American law? What part would a person not be able to do if a person were defined as mentally insane? Drive a car?
How can they stop it? If you're talking about American law, I don't know how you could really say stop any insane person from doing much of anything.
You can't? What do you think, Len?
How would you enforce it?
How do you enforce? You wouldn't give him a driver's license.
If he already has a driver's license. So
Could you confiscate it?
If caused, I don't know,
It would have to be adjudicated before you could take it away from him.
Okay. What we're going to study now is what he wants to do is wants to define if a person is a shoter in one area, there's one specific area that the person struggles with, to the area of insanity, classic addicts, right? They're insane with a very specific area, absolutely insane in a specific area. Does that make them incapable from all other areas?
they could, I would think they could do anything that a minor could do, a very young minor could do. Can't enter into a contract, wouldn't be enforceable. But they could go to the store and buy a package of gum.
Contract is not enforceable. It's a very good question. It's a very interesting perspective with regards to a. It's important that we identify them, that the Gemara puts them together. Someone who's a minor and someone who's not who's mentally challenged.
They're not harming anybody. They're just
I know.
slow.
Right. So if they're not harming anybody, then we should be okay with them doing whatever they do.
Except for entering into a contract or something that's probably not enforceable because it's not enforceable for a minor.
You saying from a Torah perspective or a legal perspective?
Legal perspective.
You think someone who's mentally insane cannot enter into a contract?
It's not for a minor can't. It can't be enforced. You can't enforce it. The minor, it can't be enforced against the minor. So if a harmlessly insane person enters into a contract, then they can't enforce it against them.
They can't.
I would think.
Adrian, what do you say?
Has this person legally been declared insane? Is there some sort of record?
Let's say there is. Yeah. Yes.
Because if there hasn't been, he can even buy a gun, as has been proven in Highland Park.
Right. What we really want to do is, I mean, like, if you notice, where was my quote? Some of these people that claimed insanity, were claiming insanity for a specific area. You know, who was it? The person that said that he heard voices in his head, or she was tormented by her husband with a specific area. Whatever those things are, they're tormented in a specific area. Other than that, besides for her relationship with her husband, she should be considered normal from all other aspects of all other aspects. So the real question is, we said, and when we want to bring it down, is we want to bring it to our halachic perspective. We said that a person who's a shota, someone who's considered insane, is patur, is not obligated, is not the obligations of halachic obligations. So the real question is, what about other capacities? Are they able to marry? Are they able to get divorced? Are they able to give testimony? Are they able to do any other things that will fall under the Jewish category? Okay, that's really where we're at. So, Adrian, just for you, we a very fascinating individual. There was, I'll just read it again for you. This is the quote that this is a case that came in front of Moshe Feinstein. Individual began making messianic claims as a young man. His belief in these claims led to abnormal conduct, insisting on reading on the Torah and leading prayer services in the synagogue. On one occasion, when he was not permitted to lead the Torah service, he took the Sefer Torah and ran out of the synagogue. He'd travel through Jewish communities. He'd take things from people until they gave him money for his charitable purposes. He climbed trees and was trying to get people's attention to speak, and would occasionally walk around without any clothing, claiming that he was on the level of Adam before his sin. Yet, and at some point in time, he calmed down all of this stuff that was going on inside of him. It did not become apparent. It stopped being apparent for about 3 years. So 3 years, this guy lived a normal life, and then he taught at a school, and he got married. And unfortunately, after a short while, his messianic claims came back out into the public, and he started his craziness again. his life, he was kicked out of his house, and he went to live with his father, and he had nothing to do with his wife. After about, and then he calmed back down. And after about 2 years of calmness, of living life as normal, as a normal person, he was brought to Rabbi Moshe Feinstein to evaluate whether he's able to give his wife a get. Okay, whether he's able to give his wife a get, because you need to be of sane mind in order to be able to give a get. That is the halakha, that is Jewish law. See, one has to be not only of sane mind, but you're not being pushed, not being forced, you're not under duress to give a get. Okay, so this person is brought to Rabbi Moshe Feinstein, and that is where we pick up over here. So Moshe Feinstein is a very, very interesting discussion over here. He brings Maimonides, and he's going to divide Maimonides into two different categories. Category number one, with regards to all your halachic obligations of the Torah, mitzvahs that we're obligated. We're meant to read the Shema twice a day. We're meant to pray 3 times a day. Where it says all the mitzvahs, or eat kosher, whatever, that's called the mitzvahs. There's the other parts, which are the legal binding capacity of a human being, getting married, or whatever they may be, buying property, all those things. There is that perspective, and he wants to separate the two. Okay, wants to separate the two, because what he's going to say, even if this person, what he's going to try and say is, even if this person is considered halachically insane, that does not mean that he cannot give his wife a divorce. Okay, here we go. But first, we need to define, we said that if a person is a shota in one area, if a person is insane in one area, does that make him insane from all other aspects as well? Okay, so here's the Rambam, Maimonides. According to the Torah law, a shota is disqualified from giving testimony because he's not obligated in mitzvahs. Can I just put this back here? So again, the person is, according to Torah law, a shota is not able to give testimony because he is not obligated in mitzvahs. This applies not only to a fool who walks around unclothed, breaks utensils and throws stones, but even to one whose mind became unstable and acts irrationally with regards to one particular matter. Even though he speaks and acts normally regarding other matters, such a person is disqualified from giving testimony and is in the category of a shota. Okay, so he said two things, two very important things. Number one, you don't need to be a shota in all areas, but just a shota in one specific area makes person, disqualifies person from all Torah obligations. Okay, and number two, he also said, is that a shota is disqualified from giving testimony, right? Testimony, is that a legal thing or is that a Torah thing? What is it?
It's in the Torah.
Huh?
Testimony is in the Torah.
I know it's, what do you mean? What are you trying to say? Is it a legal capacity when a person gives testimony? For example, a person testifies that Reuven married Sarah. Rob married Sarah. He's the witness. Okay, is that a legal thing or is that a halachic thing? Because he said over here that if a person is irrational or is disqualified in one area, he's disqualified in all areas.
Aren't there Mishnahs? The Mishnah says that you have to have a witness to bring the court. There has to be a witness, two witnesses. So it has to be a Torah thing, right?
Right. So it has to be a Torah thing, right?
Be both.
Now, so for example, a child cannot give testimony. Someone who's not Jewish cannot give testimony. You need to have the halachic obligations on you in order to be able to give testimony. Okay, So at first glance, it appears the Rambam explicitly classifies a person who is a shota regarding all matters, even if he acts insanely in one particular area. This would mean that the man who spoke to Rabbi Moshe Feinstein would be would be classified as a shota and would therefore not be able to give his wife again. Can you hold on for your phenomenal ranking? Like 20 minutes, 25 minutes? Thank you so much. Okay, however, there are at least two issues that arise with this understanding of the Rambam. Number one, why does the Rambam connect the shota's disqualification for testimony to the fact that he's Eino ben mitzvahs? He's not obligated in performing mitzvahs. This is what Rabbi Moshe Feinstein is going to bring out. And number two, the halacha of a shota applies to countless areas of Jewish law: prayer, business, murder, lulav, gittin, divorce, and everything else. Why would the Rambam teach us a general rule about the status of a shota in specific context of testimony, an area of halacha that anyway it has much higher standards of illegibility than other areas of Jewish law? And ultimately, what he's trying to go, what Rabbi Moshe Feinstein is going to try and pull out of this Rambam, this Maimonides, he's going to say like this. He's going to say, a shota, someone who's insane, even from a small area, from one area, is going to be not obligated in any area of the Torah. Okay. Now, giving testimony is going to fall under that umbrella. However, everything else he may be able to do from a legal perspective, as long as he's not deemed insane in those areas. Okay, and that is, he has the iris motive. It seems to me that the Rambam's assertion, i.e., that one who behaves insane in one area but behaves normal in all other areas is halachically classified as a shota across the board, was not said in regards to all areas of halacha. Rather, the Rambam felt that specifically by mitzvahs, one who is a shota for one mitzvah is exempt from all mitzvahs. So it's specifically with regards to mitzvahs, since the Torah is only obligatory for those capable of observing it in its entirety.
So giving a get is really a mitzvah. No, it's a
legal capacity.
Okay. So then there's the difference between having a legal and then the Torah, right? What you're saying?
So he's saying that if let's just work with this, a cotton, someone who's underage. Okay, let's work with a cotton. A cotton does not have any Torah obligations, right. Mitzvah obligations. It's called a mitzvah obligation. So if you don't have mitzvah obligations, you don't have any obligations full time. It doesn't matter if it's one specific area that is incapable of with regards to mitzvahs across the board. Yeah. Right? The words he uses, is even though that he's able to have a normal conversation in other areas, he's considered a shota from all aspects of the Torah, because Torah is given to a person who's able to fulfill all the Torah obligations. Okay. However, with regards to, here we go. Okay, so I divide it up like this. Okay, I think we're pretty clear. With regards to being able to make purchases and to be able to make business dealings, if he is sane in that area, then we're going to allow that to happen. Okay, and that is where we're going to pull in with regards to this person. So here comes let's just follow up with the Moshe Feinstein and just finish his thing. But when it comes to monetary matters, for example, even though shota, who is mentally disturbed in one area, may be exempt from mitzvahs, he's still able to buy and sell things. He can be a messenger. And hence, if he's only a shota in one area, he's still able to perform halachic actions in other areas, such as serving as a messenger, to separate tithes, to do business for himself or others, and to marry and divorce, so long as he has clarity of thought in the specific area he wishes to participate in. That's all that matters, right? The Rambam wants you to have the ability of thought. What was his words? Niseb das. Das is knowing, clarity of thought. Clarity of thought, by the way, a child under bar mitzvah does not have das. That's what we talk about. A child does not have das. So therefore, a child cannot do the legal. He's not able to get married, not able to get law. These parts are, he's incapable because of his lack of das, is missing some das, a child. However, someone who's insane in one area, if he has clarity and he has das in this area, he's able to fulfill that and do what he needs to do in that area.
But who gives him that okay to do that? I mean, is it like himself? Well, I'm fine over here. Over here, I'm having a problem. Over here, I'm fine, so I can do this. I mean, is there someone who has responsibility, or is he himself accountable for that? Someone has the responsibility to say, boom.
Oh, so you're saying like a person gets married?
Yeah.
Is
How
it-
do we know? He says that.
I would venture to say that it is your average person, the average human being is considered sane. Unless yeah, Len also shakes his head. But your wives have something in common that we don't know about.
A child is somebody under 13.
Say again?
A child is defined as someone under 13.
Correct. Under bar mitzvah. That's what bar mitzvah happens. Bar mitzvah is not, you don't just become a man. You become you're granted clear clarity of thought. One's given that facility to be able to make
Decisions.
to make healthy decisions.
Is it more than just having your 13th
ma-
birthday?
Is it more than having the 13th birthday from a Torah perspective? No.
What about girls? Does any of the we're talking about?
12.
Huh?
12.
So what we're talking about applies to girls also?
12 at
Women-
the age of 12.
And it-
Women at the age of 12. Correct.
halakhic law for everything you're saying.
Yes.
Insanity.
Insanity. I mean, like a woman is able to get married, make a purchase, whatever it is. Okay, so Rav Moshe, he resolved these two questions by drawing fundamental distinction between mitzvah obligations and other areas of halacha with respect to the status of a shoteh, meaning that there's a shoteh. If he has mitzvah obligations, he's completely absolved. With regards to other legal areas, he is able to fulfill. Okay. Only with regards to that area. With regards to all other areas, since he does not display any abnormal behavior in those contexts, he is not treated as a shoteh, right? It goes without saying that if a shoteh is a shoteh in all areas, then
Right.
he can't
Right.
do any legal proceedings either.
But he's saying that shoteh could be just as in one area. No,
With specific
in
sense.
specific. Yeah. Okay, so now they're not punished or rewarded in that area, but then in these other areas, they're punished or rewarded.
No, say it again.
So you say this, she's saying the shoteh could be just one area,
A shoteh is he's in one area.
one
he's a
area only,
shoteh.
but in the other areas, he's fine.
Correct.
So in this area, he's not punished or
No.
rewarded,
No,
or is it just across the board?
it's across the board with
So he's a
regards to
shoteh as a
mitzvahs.
big thing, but he's a shoteh in this-
Once he gets the shoteh status,
right,
then
he's
he's absolved from all mitzvahs.
okay,
He gets no reward, no punishment
right.
of all mitzvahs. But with regards to legal behaviors, that depends on his capacity
Yeah, okay.
of shoteh, that the definition of shoteh.
Is it beyond the scope of the lesson to ask how he's determined to be a shoteh?
How we determine someone to be a shoteh?
Is that beyond the scope of what we're talking about?
Well, he does things that are not,
But who decides, who certifies them?
well, who certifies it? It's a good question.
I mean,
It
you
is a
just
good
say
question.
you're a shoulder and that's it. I don't think you can just make wild.
No, it needs to be,
accusations against people.
there needs to be a behavior that is established.
But who
and that-
determines, is there an authority that
Well,
determines?
Is there, I don't know, it's a good question. I don't know, is there, meaning, so let's go like this. A very simple, very practical case, right? A person who has no financial capacity of financial responsibility, right? So he somehow his guardians weren't really responsible, and he drew $10,000. Yeah, and someone saw him drawing $10,000 from the bank, and came up to him and said, "Hey, how would you like a lollipop?" And he was said, "I'd love a lollipop. How much?" He said, "Well, give me $10,000. I'll give you a lollipop." So he gives him the $10,000, and he takes the lollipop. Okay. Now, the people who are in charge, what they call them, the apotropos, the person who's his guardians, will take this person to court and say that transfer, that financial transaction is not binding, because he was not of clear state in mind in order to be able to make that transaction. Okay, so then we're going to, in base then, they're going to find if this person was in clear state of mind, and if they decide that it's not, then they'll say that transaction was not binding, and you need to get back the $10,000, and you get your lollipop back. Does that make sense? Right? Now he may be in clear mind. He had clear mind with regards to being able to drive carefully, for example. He may be able to drive, but it doesn't mean that he understands financial responsibility.
So we're also talking though then with the rulings of the base tin, not of U.S. courts or anything.
Correct. We're specifically focusing on that,
specifically
and
the
that's
base.
why I think where it's coming back with regards to Moshe Feinstein,
Right.
is specifically dealing with him giving a get, because you need a base in
Right.
order to be able to get it, to allow him to give a get.
So the base then will decide, can really much
Need
says
to.
that they be there, and they can say his actions make him this way.
Correct.
Okay, all right, that's,
Okay.
So we're gonna-
So and he does a really beautiful chart over here. You can look at this chart over here. So Moshe's understanding of the Rambam, he says, for example, let's say a person is insane with regards to business matters. You see the legal matters. So he's insane with regards to business matters. With regards to divorce and other legal matters, he's normal, right? So Shota status only affects the legal area in which his insane behavior is relevant, and he's considered a Shota with regards to business matters, but normal in divorce and other legal matters. With regards to mitzvah obligations, however, so for example, let's say he's insane, considered a Shota with regards to eating matzah, he's insane, but he would understand or be able to do a shaking of a lulav and other mitzvahs. If a Shota is exempt from one mitzvah, then he's exempt from all mitzvahs. So therefore, eating matzah, shaking lulav, and all other mitzvahs, he's completely exempt from. Okay, so that is a very interesting perspective, and dare I say, it's a very harsh perspective that Rav Moshe Feinstein is taking over here, in that there's a thin line. I don't know, dare I say it? There's a thin line with regards to people who are considered normal or insane, right?
Yeah.
So the exception to these, yeah. What's up, Adrian?
So if you are a Shota across the board, a woman cannot get a divorce, she's stuck with him?
This Shota across the board, well, The question is, was he a shoteh at the time of marriage?
What if he was not?
If he was not a shoteh at the time of marriage, she's stuck. Yeah, she's stuck. Well, if I dare explain, this is called, that would be called a living aguna, meaning that your husband is present with you, but his mind is not. And therefore, he's incapable of giving you the divorce. You need a physical person and you need his mind.
So the rest of your life is controlled by that because you can't remarry, correct?
The Torah is so cruel. I have no words. The aguna issue, it's a problem. I don't know how to deal. I don't have good answers for. We're dealing, yeah. Yes, from a strict halachic perspective, she would be chained. She would be chained in this ridiculous marriage.
As a practical matter, this applies to arranged marriages.
We don't have. What do you mean?
If you're likely to be going by strict Jewish law, chances are your marriage was arranged also.
No, strict Jewish law is the husband and the wife have to meet each other beforehand and have to like each other and have to agree to marry each other.
It's not like Fiddler on the Roof.
It's not like Fiddler on the Roof.
I didn't know that.
No, yeah. They have to see each other. They have to think of each other as attractive. Okay, let's make a bit of progress. According to the Ramosha rules, that an individual with mental impairment in one particular area is legally considered a shoteh only with regards to the areas of life affected by his disorder, even though it's exempt from all mitzvahs. Ramosha therefore allowed the self-proclaimed Messiah to deliver the get to his wife, since he was perfectly sane with regards to matters of marriage and divorce. So for example, over here, he thinks that he's Messiah, and that's where he's insane. With regards to all other legal matters, he is normal, and therefore he is able to give his wife her divorce.
So if there is the word exempt, and if they're exempt, can they still do it? Or they're not allowed to do it? Is it just exempt, or they're prohibited from giving it a get? If they're exempt from
There's no
giving
get.
if it's safe, say he's an insane from the divorce. I mean, say, okay,
if he's insane
from the divorce, that means he's insane from that means he can't do a get.
He cannot get a get.
Okay,
Correct.
so is that because he's exempt, or that's because that's the law? He just can't do it. He's insane, so he can't. So it's not
correct.
It's not.
It doesn't count.
It doesn't count.
He can say the words, but he's not saying them.
But if if he was insane from the divorce, then it would be null and void too, because that's no good. Correct?
If right. So the real question is where it's coming, the real question comes up is when a person gets married,
Right.
and then he goes,
Right.
or gets one of the numerous mental challenges that a person may have. Person gets what's when he forgets everything?
Alzheimer's.
You're making fun of me over here, guys. Lynn, where are you? Person gets Alzheimer's. Let's say, God forbid, person gets Alzheimer's at a very young age, and his wife is still young. And let's say there may be certain advantages for her to get out of the marriage versus waiting.
Yes.
Waiting through the marriage, right? I would venture to say that this Ramosha is right. So Ramosha, I mean, like my experience with people who have Alzheimer's, I've seen it numerous times. They will come back, right? There are times, right? We've all watched the movie The Notebook numerous times, no? The Notebook, where the guy whose wife gets Alzheimer's, and he reads her this book. the notebook, all her diary about their life. And at the end of the book, she remembers and she remembers it's her. And then she comes back. Like I've seen people, I mean, like Len Bird was telling me like his mom was dehydrated and she was very not present. She didn't remember who he was. She was speaking in Romanian, like it was very, and then he got her liquids and he got her nutrition and her mind came back. So I would venture to say that such a person, I'll tell you the advantage, or whatever, leave it at let's say a person is, he gets Alzheimer's at a young age, God forbid, and they don't have any children, he's married, doesn't have any children, there will be advantages for his wife to get divorced before he dies, rather than him dying without children, in that he would fall to the brother, have more complications here. So if he has a serious bout of Alzheimer's and we're able to get him back present, mentally present at a certain point in time, he can be considered shote from that period of time. Right now is not considered shote from all aspects and should be able to give a get. It's an interesting question of, I'll speak to Rabbi Reese about it. Let's tie up a couple of things.
For somebody in a coma.
Someone in a coma
Yeah.
is not considered present. Correct. Yeah.
But they could give a get anyways, could they?
Cannot say. Give
Yeah,
it.
that's right.
So
Yeah.
the person who's in coma needs to say, write the get, and he needs to physically give a. So now so there's very interesting. So this debate would affect the status of the killers in the tragic case of Levi Kletsky, Rabbi Chatzera. According to Moshe, since these individuals were clearly mentally disturbed with regards to certain errors, they are halachically absolved from culpability of their actions, and regardless of the mental condition at the time they committed their crimes, and regardless of whether it can be determined that the crimes directly resulted from mental impairment. Okay. However, the notable Yehuda, he holds something very different. He holds that a mental patient's impairment in one area does not render a person a shota with regards to other areas. As such, a criminal, don't worry about it. It's fine. As such, a criminal would be acquitted on the grounds of mental incapacity only if it can be determined that the criminal act itself was the result of the disorder. So our question is, if a person is insane in a certain area, can we pull it across and bring him across to all other areas? Well, so from Moshe Feinstein's perspective, with regards to us punishing a person from a halachic perspective, if they are insane, if they're considered a shota, then we don't punish them for their actions. According to the note of Yehuda, it's only if their insanity is specific to the action that they did, and therefore that'd be considered insane as well. Okay, and then he says something very interesting. He says that murder is different. Murder takes on a greater responsibility. So the Torah says over here in the gray box, if a person intentionally plots to kill his friend with trickery, even if he is found while in the middle of doing the avodah services on the mizbech, on the altar, he must be taken away immediately to be killed. So our sages learn from the word trickery, plots to kill his friend with trickery. The word trickery is used to teach us that this halacha does not apply to a deaf mute, a shota, or a minor, as they do not have the mental capacity to come up with trickery plots. So if a shota is already exempt from culpability of crimes he committed out of his mental disability, why does the Mechilta need specifically mention this case of murder? So that's where we come up with this concept of the difference between murder and all other crimes. The obvious question arises as to why does the Mechilta require a special inference in the context of murder? Possibly, the Mechilta inferred from the phrase "Largo ba'arma" that capital punishment for murder requires a higher standard of mental capacity. In other areas of halacha, while a person is generally not exempt from religious obligation unless he can be formally classified as a halachic shoteh, when it comes to murder, even a mild condition of mental impairment is grounds for acquittal. It's fascinating insight. This understanding may be used to explain the halacha found in the Rambam, which says that we only appoint the Sanhedrin, who are going to give their judges of the high court. We only appoint them men who are wise, understanding, distinguished in wisdom of the Torah with tremendous depth, and are familiar with other areas of wisdom, he says science, such as medicine, mathematics, and astronomy. We need a judge to be able to be familiar with these other areas of wisdom, medicine, mathematics, and astronomy. So he's asking, why do you think a judge needs to know medicine and mathematics? In light of what we have seen, perhaps we can understand why a judge needs knowledge in medicine, or at least in psychiatry, as a judge needs to be able to determine whether or not a criminal act was the result of mental disorder. Distinguishing between regular anger and clinical psychotism requires a degree of scientific expertise. And it is perhaps for this reason that the Rambam requires judges of the higher courts to possess such knowledge. Okay, so with what have we learned tonight? I would like to summarize from the perspective of, we learned about what a shoteh is, someone who's considered insane. We defined that, we explained that there are differences, that a shoteh is not obligated with regards to halachic obligations. And we explained this capacity of das, of having knowledge, to be clear-minded, and that they're able to do other things, according to Moshe Feinstein, they're able to fulfill other mitzvahs in other mitzvahs. They're able to fulfill other legal capacities in other areas. And even though they may be defined as a shoteh, which would make them a shoteh across the board. The challenge with the Rambam, with Moshe Feinstein's perspective, the big challenge with it is that what he ultimately is saying is that if a person is defined as a shoteh in an area, in one area, then he's patur, he's not obligated from all other mitzvahs in the Torah. That would mean that, would he be able to be counted for a minyan? Could he get an aliyah in the Torah? Can he say, can he do a whole bunch of things? According to Moshe Feinstein, he would say no, which is a very difficult thing to swallow. Let's just say that. Let's just leave it at that. I think there's more to look into, to think about. That perspective. I want to write this down. I want to speak to Rabbi Reese about shoteh lizman, a shoteh for a period of time. Okay. Wish you all a good Shabbos. The schedule tomorrow evening we're having pregame at the Chaim Center at 5:45 and Kabbalat Shabbat.
At 6:30, right?
Mincha at 6:30 at the Chaim Center. We're having a fancy lunch tomorrow at the Chaim Center, as well as third meal at our home. If anyone wants to join, you're welcome to join us. 6 p.m. at our house. Love to see you guys with the vegans. It's 6 p.m. Is that what I said? I think I said 7.
6 or 7. I think it's 7.
I think I said 7. 7 it is.
5:45 is the pregame.
Right.
On Friday.
Friday. Yeah.
Shabbos day 7 at our home.
Oh. 5:45 tomorrow.
Okay. Shabbat shalom. Any questions? We're all good. We're good.
Thank you.
Shabbat
Rabbi.
shalom. Who is there?
Rabbi,
Yeah.
I was just going to say, when you did the title, I actually thought this was going to, and I thought about it because of this week's Torah portion, that we were going to head towards the refugee cities, unintentional murder, that this would be an example of maybe guilty but protected, but clearly they didn't go in that direction. So
Yeah. Oh, I see. No, that is a very different direction, right? The directional unintentional.
Yeah, I thought they would somehow connect it, but
That would be an interesting way.
Yeah.
Unintentional.
Interesting. yeah, very good. Yeah, Shkala.
Okay, Shkar, have a good job.
All right, guys.